Marcus Reed was a 35-year-old teacher, beloved by his students and respected in his community. He was known for his calm demeanor and his ability to inspire even the most troubled kids in his classroom. Despite his accomplishments, Marcus was no stranger to the quiet prejudice that lingered in society. One evening, after a long day at work, Marcus decided to take a short drive to clear his head. The streets were quiet, the glow of streetlights reflecting off the wet pavement. As Marcus drove through a suburban neighborhood, he noticed flashing blue lights in his rearview mirror. Confused, he glanced at his speedometer. He wasn't speeding, and his registration was up to date. Still, he pulled over, his heart beginning to race. Two officers stepped out of the squad car, their expressions stern. Marcus rolled down his window, keeping his hands on the steering wheel. "Good evening, officers. Is there a problem?" he asked calmly. "License and registration," one officer barked. Marcus complied, moving slowly and deliberately. He knew the rules. No sudden movements. "Stay polite. As the officer took his documents, the second officer shone a flashlight into Marcus's car, inspecting every corner. "Where are you headed?" the officer with the flashlight asked, his tone accusatory. "Just driving home," Marcus replied. "Why are you in this neighborhood?" the officer pressed, ignoring Marcus's response. Marcus felt the weight of the question. He knew exactly what the officer was implying. "I live nearby," he said, keeping his tone measured. The first officer returned with his license. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. "Why? What's going on?" Marcus asked, his voice steady but tense. "Step out of the vehicle," the officer repeated, his hand hovering near his holster. Marcus hesitated but complied, stepping out with his hands visible. As soon as he was out, the second officer grabbed his arm roughly, pushing him against the car. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked, his voice rising with a mix of confusion and fear. "Stay quiet," the officer snapped. "I haven't done anything wrong," Marcus protested. The first officer patted him down aggressively, finding nothing. Frustrated, he muttered something under his breath. The tension in the air was palpable, and Marcus could feel the stares of a few bystanders gathering nearby. "Why are you harassing me?" Marcus finally asked, his voice trembling with frustration. "Shut up," the second officer barked before shoving Marcus harder against the car. The situation escalated quickly. One officer grabbed Marcus's arm, twisting it behind his back. When Marcus winced and instinctively tried to pull away, the other officer yelled, "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting," Marcus shouted, his voice breaking, but his protests were met with force. One officer struck Marcus in the back of the legs, causing him to fall to the ground. The other officer knelt on his back, pressing his weight down. Marcus struggled to breathe. "Please, I can't breathe," he gasped, his voice desperate. The crowd of bystanders grew larger. People started pulling out their phones, recording the incident. A woman yelled, "What are you doing? He hasn't done anything." But the officers seemed unfazed by the crowd, their actions growing more aggressive. Marcus felt helpless. The pain in his chest and arms was unbearable, but what hurt more was the humiliation. He thought of his students, his family, and the countless times he had taught his kids to believe in justice and fairness. Eventually, the officers hauled him to his feet and handcuffed him. His face was swollen, his lip bleeding. "What's the charge?" someone in the crowd demanded. The officers ignored the question, leading Marcus to their squad car without explanation. Hours later, Marcus sat in a cold holding cell, his mind racing. He replayed the events over and over, trying to understand how a simple drive had turned into a nightmare. When his lawyer arrived, he was released without charges. The explanation? A case of mistaken identity. But the damage had already been done. The videos of the incident went viral, sparking outrage across the country. People demanded accountability, calling for the officers involved to be suspended and charged. Marcus, however, felt conflicted. While he was grateful for the support, he struggled to process the trauma. He had always believed in the system, but now he wasn't sure. When reporters asked him how he felt, Marcus simply said, "Tired. I'm just tired of being seen as a threat because of the color of my skin." His words resonated with millions, becoming a rallying cry for justice. Protests erupted nationwide, with people carrying signs that read, "Justice for Marcus and end police brutality." Despite his pain, Marcus found solace in his community. His students wrote him letters of support, telling him how much he inspired them. His neighbors rallied around him, organizing peaceful demonstrations to demand change. Marcus decided to use his platform to speak out against racism and police brutality. "This isn't just about me," he said during a public speech. "It's about all of us who've been judged unfairly, hurt, or silenced. We deserve better." Over time, Marcus began to heal, though the scars of that night remained. The officers involved were eventually held accountable, but for Marcus, the fight for justice wasn't over. He dedicated his life to teaching not just his students, but the world, that change is possible. Through his pain, Marcus became a beacon of hope, proving that even in the face of injustice, resilience and love could prevail.